So what did we talk about here? Today we'll finish this part. I'll leave you on time, don't worry. You're scared? Studying more is never a problem, right? Studying less is a problem. So, audible? Anybody? Can somebody tell me? Is it audible? So if you study less, then you should study relevant. Fine, but there is nothing like less study. In a competitive exam, there is nothing like over. It is never over. So even if you've qualified, right? I had a student, Sachin Rana. He was IS 2013 batch. First student tha. So he used to come from IT Delhi. He qualified first IRTS, then IRS, then IS. So he used to come from IT Delhi. He was studying and preparing. His father was, I think, sub-inspector in Delhi police. So he remembered his entire interview. He gave 3 interviews. So he remembered each and every word of the entire interview. And then he used to send me the transcript. Okay, he asked me this, then he asked me this, he asked me this, he asked me. So that student's memory was extraordinary. So he used to say, sir, if we study more, then at least we have the liberty to manipulate it. If we study less, then we are not at liberty. Why? Because our content is defined already. So UPSC exam, no doubt, right? There is a specific knowledge which is required. But if you know little extra, that does not hurt you in the exam. Because there are so many questions that will be asked which will never have a direct answer. Majority of them now, at least in the last 6-7 years, this scenario has changed. So they never ask a direct question. Even for indirect question, right? When you start or when you introduce that question, you need to give some basic context, background. So your style of answer writing becomes very important. And how will you improve that, obviously, or your style of answer writing will be reflected in the way you express. Now that's very important. So knowing more will not hurt, right? Studying less will hurt, right? How many hours you study GS? How many hours GS class? 2.5 hours. Okay. But that's quite less for GS. Oh, I mean, in the beginning it's okay, right? You've just started. So you can take it slow, but in general, nothing less than 3 hours, right? Because if you have to explain and we have to discuss and then we have to write also, then it will take time. If we don't have to analyze and explain, we just have to write, then it's fine. So if we just come and say, okay, fine, this is the topic, this is what we have to write, then it's easy. But the moment we start analyzing, discussing, if you discuss and analyze, then you remember. So rote learning is not the method always, right? 40% you have to learn, no doubt. You have to memorize, but not every part you can do, right? So let's come back. What did we talk about here? Kautilya's Arthashastra, why the need for Arthashastra, right? What about Mughal administration? Marriage diplomacy, yes. Obviously, see, using marriage or alliance as a form of fostering a partnership or fraternity, right? Maybe with the enemies or maybe with those who are powerful to you. So Kautilya promoted this idea that if there is a strong enemy, right, or there is an enemy, right, and if he could be made friend, that's better that way. So rather than having a strong enemy, make that enemy a friend. So if you're not able to defeat an enemy, what do? Manipulate that enemy through a relationship. So if you use marriage alliance as a method of association, right, it will create a better relationship between you two. That is a bond by blood, right? So that is much influential, right, in making the enemy a friend. We use today also various formats of diplomacy. For example, cricket, sports is a means of diplomacy, right? Music, Bollywood, Pakistani actors working in India. right? So obviously when they go back, they carry back the goodwill of India, right? So in general, we use something called cultural diplomacy, right? That is called soft diplomacy. And there is hard diplomacy when you fight, negotiate, bargain, that's a different. Fine. Mughal administration, powers, right? We have talked about that idea. Fine. British administration, right? What exactly is the need to study British administration? We have discussed, but what is the purpose of studying it? Yes, the source of the modern or today's civil services lies with the British administration. Britishers, whatever purpose they had, that's a different thing, right? But whatever system they established, that was one of the best systems. And that is why you can imagine that almost 1/3 of the world was controlled by them. So how such a small country can do that? An island country. How it can do that? Because of the superiority of the administrative system it had. So imagine, right, the system which they developed, the principles which they used, the method and technique which they followed, okay, that was probably one of the best in the world. And that is why we believe that the foundation of civil services that was laid in India, fine, that was a very strong foundation. Most of the British uh, officials, right, who were there during colonial rule, right, majority of them were carried forward even after independence. The government of India, the new government, right, allowed them or asked them or requested them that you can stay back if you want, we will protect you. So 40% officials almost remained who were working in the imperial civil services, right? That was the colonial civil services, right? So when we became independent, we had two dominant services existing under the British: Imperial Police Services, right, and Imperial Civil Services. That is IAS, IAS of today, and IPS of today. So Imperial Police and Imperial Civil Services. Okay, those both were existing, and we took them as it is. In 1962-63, we launched or we created something called Indian Forest Services, whose exam was conducted in 1967. My father was an IFS officer, right? He retired in 2017. So Indian Forest Services, Indian Police Services, and Indian Administrative Services are the three all India services. Police and administration existed since the colonial times. Forest services were added late. There was demand for so many other services, agriculture services, right? Economic services. We launched economic services, right? Industrial development services, health services, judicial services. So there is demand for a lot of services in the all India format. You understand? So the legacy of all India service in India comes from the British. What is an all India service? Any idea? You want to become IAS? All of you, right? I hope online also all of them want to become IAS. Everybody wants to become IAS. Why? No, but why nobody wants to become IPS? Everybody wants to become IAS. And there are only 80, 90 seats, maybe 100 at the maximum. How will all of you? Now, all of you can become, right? But if I add all the batches, then how can all of you become IAS, right? Seats are very less. Only from this coaching, right? So there are so many coaching now, all of them aspire, I will become IAS. So around 1 lakh people want to become IAS, but only 100 will become IAS in 1 year, right? Obviously, they can become subsequent years. Why IAS? Why not IPS, IRS, forest services? There are a lot of services which are equally influential, but why IAS? I had a I had a cousin sister, she's quite elder to me now. She's IPS. So she qualified IAS in the first attempt, 23rd, 24th rank, long back. She did not appear for the medical. She got many reminders from the UPSC. Once that time medical was held after the selection. Now the medical is held after you write your mains, right? So, so technically, right, she avoided medical for Lot of time. She gave lot of excuses. So never medical could be conducted. Finally, she did not qualify. That means she was not put in the list because she did not appear for the medical. So she had by mistake filled IAS as the first option. She wanted IPS. She never imagined that she will get such a rank in the first attempt. So she put IAS first, IPS second. Now she said, I want IPS. Once you become IAS, you cannot become IPS. That's a big problem. So if you have qualified IAS, then you cannot reapply for civil services. Indian Forest Services, Indian Administrative Services, you cannot reapply. If you become IPS, you can reapply. So she had a dilemma now. Then next attempt, she got, I think, 50 kuch rank. And she had filled only IPS. Her interview went for 45-50 minutes only because of that. That why have you filled only this service? So she said, I qualified and I could not appear. I had some problem. But see, they knew that. So see, in fact, they were very critical of her that you have wasted one person's seat and this, and you wasted a lot of resource of the government. But she said, see, what is her view? That women in police in uniform is much safe. That was her perspective. So see, collector, why do you want to become IAS? Because collector's position is a multifunctional position. Collector is the true symbol, or IAS is the true symbol of generalist civil services. You can be industry secretary, you can be sports secretary, you can be tomorrow chemical secretary, you can be tomorrow some health secretary, foreign secretary, home secretary, and likewise. Now they have restricted the entry of IAS into every area. Now they have restricted, right? Because obviously there were a lot of criticism coming from other services. Otherwise, IAS is the potato of the civil services. Anywhere he can be used. And that is why a lot of, you can say, motivation towards IAS, because you can occupy any position in the system. As a hierarchy, obviously your hierarchy is above all these services, right? Even Indian Foreign Services is not at par with IAS. Because foreign services comes in totally different domain, right? Even though they are very important and elite services, right? But when in India, it is the IAS. So there have been times when IAS has become foreign secretary and not the IFS. IFS cannot become home secretary. IAS can become, right? So IPS cannot become home secretary. IAS will become. That's a big issue. So IAS has pure journalist character, and that is why it became very popular. It has the highest public interface. How do you understand that you have power? When you have public interface. See? So IAS gives you technically the glamour of civil service, and that is why a lot of people want IAS. Fine, but of late, many other services have become very important, like income tax, customs. They've also become equally influential, right? Nature of the government work which is now being performed, right? Some services obviously declined. Indian postal services declined. Corporate legal services now no more there, obviously, but it also declined, right? And likewise, IRMS, they've already associated with Indian engineering services now. So a lot of services, they are trying to move out of this domain. And there has been a talk that, okay, why don't you keep separately, right? You need to conduct the examination or make changes in the examination pattern for different services in a different manner. Because for IAS, you need a different type of person. For IPS, you need a different type of person. The same service cannot induct, right, people for the diverse kind of jobs, right? But let's say, so IAS and IPS legacy is attributed to them. Fine. Also, the laws which they made, the kind of administrative competence they had. Like I said, they were so able to govern so many territories together, and they were so efficient. So the principles they developed, the laws they created, the merit system they introduced, right? All of that was the or is inevitable for a efficient civil services system. So we thought, why to eliminate it? Why not just continue with this system? Right? For example, if I say Warren Hastings, 1772, creates the post of collector. That collector was working under company, and he was not basically the collector today, right? But still, that office was so developed that it can perform multiple functions. Collector of that time was performing magisterial functions, executive functions, administrative functions, financial functions, right? Collecting money, revenue functions, and law and order functions. So he was police, judiciary, administration, executive, development, all rolled into one. In 1773, those functions were taken away because in 1773 the Regulating Act comes, and because of Regulating Act, the judicial system is separated. So judicial powers which collector enjoyed in 1772, they were reduced in 1773 after the Regulating Act, right? Otherwise, he was performing most of the functions. So see, they have contributed extensively, more or less, whatever system that we follow today, right? That is a contribution of them, fine. They also took certain efforts after 1858 to Indianize civil service. Like I said, UPSC was created, right? Federal Public Service Commission, 1923-24. So around, you can say 1923, Lee Commission. Right? There was a Lee Commission which was formed, and in the 1919 Act, they had supported the idea of having a Central Public Service Commission or Federal Public Service Commission. This gave a boost to the entry of Indians into civil services, right, rather than only British civil service. So you can say they started taking certain efforts before independence, right? Not very long, but yes, immediately before independence, they started taking certain initiatives. And because of that, we find the mention of this UPSC in the 1935. So from 1919, 23, 35, right, they started taking initiatives of creating a developed civil services system and Indianizing it, right? So you have a part, right? See, evolution of civil services, post-independence developments, right? Coercive to welfare administration, development of political and administrative culture. This is important part, right? We'll talk about it. So see, they created the Federal Public Service Commission. Obviously, 1935 Act could not come into operation. You have studied some GS something? In GS, you studied something? What are you studying right now? Hey, anyone? What proportion? Polity, right? Fine. Polity? Okay. Tell me now. Why 1935 Act? Have you read about something about it? 1935 Act is considered to be the foundation for the formation of Constitution. Though it is not totally correct. Why? Because 1935 Act subsumed most of the previous acts. So when you say 1935 Act forms a fundamental basis of Indian Constitution, to an extent it is correct, right? But we have to look into the previous acts also. So right from 1909 to 1935 Act, whatever developments took place, they were subsumed under the Constitution. If you know, 1919, they introduced something called diarchy. Diarchy? You've heard of this term? Diarch. Dual rule. See? So 1990, diarchy was introduced, and initially diarchy was introduced at provincial level, that is the state common level. Diarchy means they had divided the functions of the government into two parts. Dual rule. One part will be governed by one system, other part will be governed by another system. So one part will be governed by ministers or responsible ministers from India. The Indian ministers who are in the Governor's Council. Governor was there at the state level, right? You know anything about this? No, right. Fine. So you should not show faces like I'm talking to the wall, right? I should feel like talking to human beings, fine? So, see, governor was to take care of the states and the provinces. basically British governor, right? So you have British India territory, right? And you had the princely states, right? You had chief commissioners provinces, the entire frontier provinces. The entire territory was divided into 4 types. So governor was taking care of province. He was making laws, right? His council was working like legislature. His council was also working like executive, right? So see, in that there were ministers, Indian people or Indians who contested elections. As you know, 1909 communal electorate was implemented. So Indians started getting into the council of the governor. So at provincial level, what they did, they divided the functions and they said that some functions will be performed by governor and his council, that means the one which is controlled by the governor. And other functions will be performed by some Indian ministers, or they will be having autonomy in performing these functions. So those functions will be controlled by the British or the governor. Okay, that were called reserved functions. Reserved. Those will be performed by Indian ministers, right? Parallelly are called transferred subjects. Reserved means important. Transferred means casual or which can be dispensed with. For example, if development is a transferred function, finance is the reserved function. That means most of the transferred functions under the Indian ministers cannot be performed if the governor does not perform the reserve function under him. So see, they indirectly controlled the governance. So they said, okay, Indians, we are giving you autonomy, you perform these functions, local development, transport, these functions are yours, right? Other functions we will control. So the functions that we will control, they are inevitable. See, you don't have money, you cannot do anything. You don't have law and order, you cannot do anything. See, that is what Britishers did. Okay, that is called the indirect monopoly. That's called indirect monopoly, right? So Britishers tried to establish that indirect monopoly, right, without making it very obvious. That is called diarchy. So in 1935, diarchy was supposed to be implemented at the union level. Earlier, it was implemented at the provinces. It did not come into operation. Fine. So Britishers did lot of administrative changes, right, which reflected that they wanted to bring or they wanted to associate Indians in administration, right? But in reality, they never wanted to do it. But these changes become important for us after independence. Why? Because we don't need to make them again and again. So to maintain the continuity with previous administration, to save our resources, to save our time, right, and to a large extent save the entire procedures which will be involved in that, we just kept those laws. You know, so at the time of independence or at the dawn of independence, we already had certain or a major portion of the administrative laws which existing with us. Major portion of the administrative system existed with us. So we did only certain modifications, like we gave the civil services constitutional status. Right? This is an important debate. When we'll study Wilson, Wilson wanted public administration to have a constitutional protection. Right? In America, they are protected, right? But they are not given that status compared to other organs of the state. So Wilson was wanting to support this idea that we can make reforms in the Constitution of America and give public administration a strong role in the Constitution. India also, many other countries. Indian Constitution has already created a provision for civil services in the Constitution itself, right? But it did not make it very powerful. But it gave the importance to civil services. See? So in Indian Constitution, we already have a separate provision for civil services. That means it enjoys constitutional protection, and that also makes the public services a very important system. That is why it creates a kind of motivation for the people, right? There is a constitutional protection. The political system cannot do whatever it wants. See? So in Indian Constitution, okay, there is part 14, right? Part 14A, right? Articles 308 to 323. They deal with civil services. See, so they enjoy considerable protection, and more or less the design, the structure, the nature of civil services is similar to what Britishers had created. Obviously, we have made a lot of changes now, right? But when we said when we became independence, almost the nature of civil services was same, and it continued for almost next 50 years. So somewhere around 1990s and 2000, we started making big reforms. Otherwise, before that, we just made some cosmetic changes, small changes, nothing more than that, right? Now, so they have constitutional status. The nature of these services have changed. Colonial system. What is the purpose? What is the purpose of a colonial government? Controlling, correct. Anything else? It wants to preserve its power, right? It wants to centralize things within itself. Obviously, it does not want any protest from the people. It does not want any revolt from the people, right? So what it will do? It will create a very strong army and a strong police. Why? Because it wants to pacify or control or restrict any kind of revolt against the power. So most of the resources used by the British for administration went into making the administration powerful so that it can control the people. Obviously, colonial administration does not give you a status of a citizen. You are basically not a citizen, you are just a subject, right? So the idea that British colonial administration, it developed, right? It developed itself. It created a lot of things. It did developmental work. It created infrastructure. But ultimate purpose for everything was to penetrate into the territory and control it. So colonial administration is called maintenance administration, regulatory administration, right? You can use the words if you want. Coercive, see the word. The word coercive means what? The word coercive here relates to something called maintenance, regulatory. Or we also use the word police state. So it is basically a police state. What is a police state? Which works for controlling, exploiting, repressing the public. So it can develop so many things, right? But ultimate purpose will be to control the people, right? So that is called a police state. The nature of the government is to control, right? Now, when we became independent, when colonial rule was eliminated, we became a democracy. What is the purpose of democracy? Why we are using the word democracy? Obviously, it is more focused on people. What is the change? When we became independent, we created a constitution, we became a democracy. What was the change? So, is the nature of administration changing? Right? From this to something called welfare. Now, what does welfare mean? Correct. Focusing on people, right? What else? First basic thing that the change, your identity changed, right? From a colonial subject, from dependent to independent, from colonial subjects to citizen. Your identity has changed. That means your government, right? Or the nature of the government that is there, that has changed, And the way government now looks at you, that also has changed. So you have become citizens now. Who are citizens? Who have rights? Who are subjects? Who are dependent? Who are requesting the government do something for me, right? Who are citizens who are telling the government do this for me. See the difference. So see, we changed towards citizens. Citizens have rights. For example, what kind of rights we have? Correct. Fundamental right. What is fundamental right? If you look at some political philosophers, right? Hobbes, Rousseau, Locke, we don't need much of their analysis. We have to simplify, right? We are public administrators, we just implement. Fine, we don't get into too much of philosophical analysis. Fine, but we will sometimes if needed. Locke, Hobbes, Rousseau, these are the people who are called contractual theorists. Right? What are contractual theorists? You want to say something, you can say this class has, though I don't follow much of democracy, but still, right? I believe in democracy, though class has democracy, don't worry. So what is that contract theory? You're right. What is that theory? What does it talk about? Correct. How the state was formed, right? Okay. Correct. The people in power. See? Contract theory says, imagine the state is coming from the God. Will you be able to do anything about it? It's coming from God. It's divine. The moment you say something is from the God, right? Or something is godly or divine, can you do anything about it? You cannot do anything about it. Even the insurance company cannot do anything about it. Right? The act of God. Fine. COVID is not act of God, right? But let us say it that way. So if something is the act of God, can you do anything about it? No. So you change the perception. You change the idea behind it, right? That no, state is something we have created. As simple. That is the idea of contract. We have created it. It is artificial, not divine. It is not coming from God. We have created it. How we have created it? Through a contract, through an agreement. Agreement between whom? Those who will be governed and those who will govern them. See? That's the simple idea that we will be governed, right, by an agreement with those who are governing us. Anybody who will be in the system of government, right, he will be doing so on the basis of this agreement. What is that agreement? Constitution. That is called political contract theory, right, or a contract theory. So see, now when we look at the state in this manner, see, it becomes obvious that what is state, what is government? The government is supposed to work on our behalf the way we want it to. Because we are the ones, we have signed the contract with the system, right? And we have given this system the power to govern us. So it's like hiring the state to perform the task for us. You understand this idea? At least basic concept, right? So contract theory says the state was created as a part of a contract between the people, right, and the state. How it was created, how this contract was established? Through a constitution. So that contract document is constitution. We have to follow that contract. Now, see, both have to follow the contract. That is why the government doesn't work as per the constitution. The people have right to modify it or remove the government. If people don't follow, then state has the right to exercise power against the people. Both are bound by the contract, right? And in the contract, it is mentioned we are the sovereign. So who controls the power? We control the power. See, this is a big change. So these people have brought this idea, and like Rousseau talks about the concept of natural rights. We all have rights as human beings. Fine, we all have rights, correct? Then who will ensure that these rights exist with us? Now you say we all have rights because we are born with rights. We have right to live. We are human beings, right? We have right to food. We have right to shelter. We have right to water, because that is essential for us to live as a human being. So when we have a right, fine, to live with dignity as a human being, right? Who ensures these rights? See, state has not come. Let's say we are just born and we have rights. That's called natural rights. So everybody has natural rights. You understand? Everybody has natural rights, right? But then, because everybody has natural rights, it is possible, right, that someone will violate someone's right. Because we all have freedom, we all have rights, right? And in this process of exercising our right, we may disturb someone else's right. So who will try to restrict this from happening? State now, see. So state becomes the protector of our natural rights. And that is why we accept the state. Okay, there is a third person. These are two citizens, right, who are fighting over their rights. But there is a third system which is created, which is neutral, unbiased, and now this will protect the rights of these two. So anytime people come in conflict, there is a system created which will protect their rights. It will ensure the rights are implemented in a proper manner. Everybody is able to exercise his right? So this can be done only when the others' rights are also protected. So now natural rights get converted into a format, right, under the government or the state. They are called fundamental rights. Political, civil, cultural, religious, many type of rights that we have or that may have, starting from the very basic of natural biological rights to extraordinary religious, cultural, intellectual, whatever rights we can think of, human rights, whatever we can think of. See, there is a range of rights. All can be protected. So certain scholars, right, they obviously emphasized upon the idea that government protects the rights of people. So see, citizens emerge, their rights emerge. Their rights need to be protected, right? And obviously, for various needs citizens have, the government has to work for them. Government is not working to restrict the citizens, to control the citizens, but government is working to promote them, to develop them, right? To create benefits for them. That is called a welfare state. So what is a police state doing? Controlling. What is a welfare state doing? Developing citizens. Promoting the interest of citizens. You understand? That's the difference. So this idea from coercive to welfare administration. Obviously, administration which is working under such a government which wants to fulfill the needs of the people or citizens, that kind of administration will try to work, right, for the needs of people, because government will tell it that you work for the people now. Colonial government was telling the administration, you work to control the people. The democratic government is saying, you work for the people. The difference. Coercive to welfare administration. This changes, right, the entire nature of governing. People become more vocal. People have more ideas. People have opinions. People want to convey these opinions. Governments have to listen to them. The colonial governments were not listening to people. So opinions will come, influence will come, public opinion will come, public participation will increase, and slowly these things will happen. What will they do? They will make the administration more conscious of the rights of people. That is called a welfare administration. An administration which is not using power to control people, but it is using power to develop them, to empower them. This changes entire thing, right? When this change happens, our view or the way we were looking at the government also changes. The way government was looking at us has also changed. So there are various scholars who have put this idea, right, into theoretical description, theoretical analysis, that when the nature of governing changes, when citizen administration relationship changes, right, the overall culture, the overall value system, the overall interaction between the government and the people change, right, and it takes a new direction than what it was existing. This is called the change or development of political and administrative culture. That culture is that how conscious the administration is to serve the people and not control the people. So do you think the new culture emerges? So there are many scholars who have contributed to this idea. See, Morris Jones, and there are new scholars are there, right? Almond and Verba, right? Ralph Miliband, lots of scholars. We'll talk about them. See, we only need their key ideas, right? Not obviously getting into a lot of analysis, but they have somewhere identified how the culture in India has changed. Rajni Kothari, a lot of scholars are there. So they have tried to bring the perspective that how we have changed from this type to this type, right? But also that change is not complete. Still, most of you who want to become civil servants, right, they want to acquire power and privilege. That's it. Majority of the people don't come with the focus or idea of public interest. Even if they come with the idea of public interest, the system doesn't work in that manner. Politicians will not allow you to do it. I'll discuss a case study, right? When a lot of case study examples we discuss, contemporary issues we discuss, right? So there is an officer called Rinku Rahi in UP. Fine. He was shot dead 7 times. In fact, shot dead, not dead, but shot 7 times, almost dead. He was a state civil servant officer working for, as a welfare officer. He identified fraud in the developmental schemes, 2006-7. Shot 7 times by the mafia on the directions of a principal secretary who was the one who is controlling these developmental schemes, the IAS. So see, a PCS officer shot 6 times for being honest and transparent by an IAS officer who was his super boss. So he was hospitalized. Fine. Somehow he recovered from that. But one of this eye, right, lost sight. His vocal cords were damaged and so many other things happened. But somehow he recovered from that. Fine. The moment he recovered, he again started doing the same task. Again, he unearthed a scam worth 40 crore rupees. Again, the government came after him. See, his seniors came after him. Politicians came after him. 2018, he was suspended. Right? Inquiries were conducted against him. He was sent to a mental hospital. That this person is not fit to be in administration. Somehow, right, he went to the court and then he filed RTI against his own government. Nobody was willing to give information. He had to go to the Supreme Court to get that RTI, right? The information through the RTI. He was not given even then also, right? Only certain portions of the information was given because government denied. Government said this is an important information we cannot give. See? He is fighting against his own system for the benefit of people. Finally, in 2021-22, he cleared the civil services. And he became the IAS now in the same category, UP. 15 years of struggle. Who will do that? Within 1 or 2 years, people will. It's okay if politician, if the Neta wants, if the Chief Minister wants, let me do what he says. That is called integrity. Many people may have honesty, but only few will have integrity. Integrity is a value which is beyond honesty. So you can be honest, but you may not have integrity. So integrity, when you have a personal risk, when you have risk of your life, right? And then still you work for the public interest, that's called integrity. Somebody is watching you or not watching you, it doesn't matter. Your inner conscience is driving you to work for the public interest. That's called integrity. It's not because of rules, regulation, punishment, suspension, salary, you are working for public interest, right? You're working for public interest because that is your inherent desire to do so. So there are people who do that. See, it's a classic case study of government against his own public servant. So the nature of civil services is changing, right? Still, we have many of the people who are corrupt and many of the people who are very honest with high level of integrity, right? This has somewhere transformed the way people look at administration and the way administration looks at people. So from controlling, regulating, administering, exploiting, now we are moving towards what? Serving. Fulfilling public interest, welfare, development, growth. Now see, the nature totally changed. So this part will try to explore that how in Indian scenario, right, there are some theoretical ideas, and then we try to apply that in Indian scenario, that how the nature of administration, its value system, its guiding values are changing in this society. As we move from 1950 Nehruvian era to today, the Modism, right? There is a changed political culture in India. And somewhere this gives or this impacts the way administration views its role in the society. If PM is honest, powerful, influential, the administration has no other option but to be honest. If politicians are corrupt, administration finds enough ways and means to become corrupt. So ultimately, all comes down to what? Political will. Whether the political system have the willpower to go ahead with the changes, right, which will alter the character of the civil services. So do they have that will? If they don't have, right, they want to continue the existing practice so that they can benefit from that. Are you able to understand? So this part will explore. It will also bring a lot of current developments which are there, right? See. So like I told you, a lot of overlapping. Slowly and slowly it will come. Wherever you'll see the overlappings. Fine. Now next unit is about philosophical and constitutional framework. This part, obviously, you'll find questions which are very analytical, questions which are opinion based, right? They are not usual standard questions which factually are asked. So you'll find, like we have discussed certain things, but let me make it more clear to you. See, so a lot of questions here will come. We were discussing that idea, constitutionalism, right? We have discussed a little bit. So a lot of questions will come on this idea. Talking about value premises. If we talk about Indian Constitution, right, how our Constitution has impacted or how it is directing, influencing the governments and systems of power to work for the society. So like you said, DPSP. DPSP is part 4. It talks about what? Collective interest. See, there are various directions given under DPSP, like to create Panchayati Raj institution, that is organization of village panchayats. Which article? Fine. You have to keep certain things on your tips. Article 40. Right? Restriction on excessive acquisition of wealth. Right? Monopolization over wealth and resources of society, restricting that. Article 39B. 39C. Restricting the acquisition, excessive acquisition of wealth, right? And redistributing this wealth in the society. So government does not stop if you want to earn money. You can be a money, right? But you cannot do so at the expense of the public interest. So see, state somewhere restricts excessive accumulation of wealth and resources, right? And tries to redistribute this wealth and resource in the society. You studied DPSP about DPSP? Right? Somewhat. So what is that sum and what? You tell me what somewhat. So DPSP comes in part 4, right? What is part 4 related to? Correct. Welfare, collective interests of the society. Anyone can keep telling me, no problem. 36 to 51. Article 36 to 51 talks about DPSP. There are a variety of directions given to the government. Like I said, organization of village panchayat, distribution of wealth, redistribution of wealth, control over excessive wealth, promote better industrial management relations. That means, to an extent, government can promote trade unions, formation of trade unions, workers' management, workers' safety, health, right? Protecting milch animals, cattle, animal husbandry, right? A lot of things are desired in that, right? And so many other functions are there. We'll talk about that, right? Uh, Restriction on the use of alcohol, intoxicants, and likewise. Obviously, DPSP is that part which talks about these things, right? But under DPSP, there is no legal obligation. Fine. It only says that these are the directions the government should give, or government should take these initiatives to be achieved in the society, right? But there is no constitutional or there is no legal obligation, in the sense that if government is not doing it, the people cannot go to the court and say that enforce these things from the government. We call this as non-justiciable part. Non-justiciable part means people can go to the court, right? But the government has no obligation, right, in fulfilling it in a particular manner. So government should fulfill it, but when, how, that is not very clear. See, so it is not a kind of obligation on the government, right? It is a moral obligation, not a legal obligation, not a judicial obligation. You understand? So, like fundamental rights are justiciable. If they are violated, you can go to the court. The court will not deny you the remedy under fundamental right. Whereas for DPSP, there is no obligation on the court also to accept your petitions. So DPSP is non-justiciable. That's a problem. So lot of things that we read under DPSP, right, they are more of moral obligations on the government. Moral means what? You can do, you cannot do. Voluntary, right? So when government feels like over the time, it follows, right? But most of the governments, they follow these directions, right? We cannot say they don't follow, right? But they are not very strict about it. They are not obligated about it, right? So it is like more of a moral boundary. They may follow, they may not follow. Some may delay, some may not delay, right? It is up to the government. So if you see certain provisions of this DPSP, right, they are somewhere because of the judicial judgments, because of the judgments of the courts, they have been brought at par with fundamental rights. So some provisions of the DPSP have an equal status with the fundamental right? That is, if they are violated somehow, then you can go to the courts will entertain, right, your petition. For some DPSP, right? These are the two DPSPs. which have equivalent status with Article 14, Article 19 of the fundamental right. But let's keep it for some later discussion. As of now, you can just know that values in the Constitution reflect what are the objectives and the goals for which the government should work in the society, right? How and on what principle the government should do or achieve these goals, what directions it should follow, right? What guidelines it should follow, what and how it should make sure that everyone benefits from its activities. That is the meaning of this particular topic. So here we try to explore the Constitution in detail, right? That, okay, what are the elements of the Constitution somewhere, right, that have guided the governments over a period of time? What are the things which government should follow, right? What are the things, what are the objectives which government has failed to achieve till now? How it can be improved? So how judiciary, executive, legislature have been working tirelessly to achieve the goals of Constitution, right? If not, then what has been the solutions and remedies? So we generally start with preamble, right? And we talk about the comparison between preamble, fundamental right, and DPS. There are a lot of case judgments, right? Obviously, we are not writing a polity answer, but still, we can incorporate certain judgments of the courts, right, in helping us present a better argument when you are trying to recommend something. So we'll explore these ideas here. Fine. So value premises mentioned in the Constitution, right? There can be a lot of areas which could be integrated into this. Fine. See. Salient features, value constitutionalism, political culture. Just now we just talked about here. See. Development of political and administrative culture. See. Same logic comes somewhere overlapping, right? So political culture, what? Obviously after independence. So we are talking about how the political culture in India has evolved, right? For example, one party dominance to multi-party or coalition politics, fine? From coalition to regionalism, from regionalism to pre-alliances, post-alliances, to turning into a three-party system, right? Or three alliance systems or two alliance system. Now, even today also in India, we have now, let's say India, there were three now, they have been converted into two now. But there was Congress, there was BJP, right? And there were others. Now those others have now aligned with Congress, and now it is only NDA and Congress plus others, that is Indi or India Alliance. Rahul Gandhi is still searching that what is A in that India. Fine. That is why education is very important. Fine. But some are more smart even without getting educated. NDA, over smart, even with less educated people. See. So logically, political parties are, in today's democracy, they are more, or they are moving towards what? The kind of polarization into groups. So you say mostly now the democracy in India is revolving around two centers of power. That may not be a good thing for democracy. That may also be a good thing for democracy. We don't know in future. So like you have Europe, US, two-party or three-party systems, right? Somewhere India is also virtually becoming like that. Most of the democracies in the world eventually become like two or three parties. That's not a good thing for democracy. In democracy, diversity is more important. Every voice matters. Fine. So see, there are a lot of small parties who have now associated with these big parties. And because of that, a lot of regional issues, a lot of community issues, they have been eliminated. See, who talks about Andaman Nicobar? Who talks about certain regions in Northeast? Who talks about certain regions in Southern India? Even though there is quite active politics, but certain regions don't find in Central India, even in UP, we have certain regions, Jharkhand. Significant economically, right? Politically, what significance? Most of the seats are in Bihar now. So see, the politics, how it shapes and reshapes the territory, right? Or the nature of regional issues and regional politics, that also is a very important factor in determining how governments are working for everyone. That is a very important factor determining what is the nature of policies and programs initiated by the government. How answerability of the government increases or decreases. So, right, we'll discuss this aspect here, that what has been the nature of transformation after independence. Fine, now see. So let's, okay, let's come to this part. Bureaucracy and democracy. See, bureaucracy and development. See, this major part we study in paper 1, Weber. But yes, there are some changing dimensions now, right? Like when you use the word bureaucracy, generally we take it similar to the word civil services, even though both are not same. Civil service means a service which is performing developmental or civic functions. What are civic functions? Civilian functions. Apart from these civic functions, government has two major functions, military and judicial. So all the officials who are performing, right, military functions and judicial functions are out of civil services. That's the basic understanding. Everybody else is part of civil services. So transport, PWD, police, everyone, civil services. Apart from them. So who are performing military, paramilitary, judicial, and these kind of functions are outside. So civil services means that system of administration which performs certain types of functions. What are these? Mostly developmental functions, right? So when we use the word bureaucracy, we refer to that system which is performing more or less civic functions, right? So bureaucracy is a form, is a kind of design which is used to develop an administrative system. If I say, okay, what is this? You'll say it's a remote, right? Can I also say it's a rectangular remote? Can there be a circular remote? There can be a voice automated remote. Fine? Merely a chip. It can be a cuboidal remote, which it is almost, right? It can be parallelepiped, you know, what are these? These are the shapes used in geometry, right? So it can have any shape. So when we say bureaucracy, it's a shape. What is the civil service? It's a function. What does remote do? It performs certain functions. What are civil services? Certain functions which are performed. Who performs this function? Public administration. What is the design of that public administration? Bureaucracy. So bureaucracy is a system, is a kind of design. It is called a structure, arrangement, which can be used in any organization, public or private, it doesn't matter. But because in government, this became extensive, most of the governments started developing their administrative system as bureaucratic model. That is why bureaucracy became synonymous to civil services. Bureau means officials, cracy means rule, a system where officials exercise power and authority. That's bureaucracy. Fine. Now see. So when we use the term bureaucracy and democracy, we are basically trying to understand how the system of administration or public administration as a bureaucracy is suitable for democracy. Democracy is a form of political system, right? And bureaucracy is a form of administrative system. So we are trying to here understand how the democratic political system, right, can be run, can be performed, can be developed, can be, improved by the use of bureaucracy as an administrative system. Are they compatible with each other or not? Can democracy be improved, enhanced by the use of bureaucracy? right? Or there are certain problems when they both operate together. So what kind of administrative system is more suitable for democracy, right? That is what we study. So is bureaucracy a better system, or should there be a replacement to bureaucracy? That is what the focus of study is. So we study their behavior, characteristics, certain examples, that whether bureaucracy has been able to serve the needs of democracy or not, right? So we have democratic system. We want to achieve the goals of democracy, right? So we need to have a system which can do that for us. Is bureaucracy the appropriate system? That is what we study here, right?